Lengthways. We are having a laugh in lockdown. Mike, who for a start? This should have been done earlier, but I haven't. Raise your hand if you have a joke or a story or something for us tonight. Mike has, Mike Pagany, David Thompson, Maria. There's a. Well, I think we'll go straight to Austin in Texas.
Oh God!
I know someone has to start the show, and Mike Russ, mate Chris isn't with us tonight, so I'm afraid you're going to have to do it.
That's Chris Lowe he's talking about, Marion.
So
Can you
Mike,
hear me okay?
You had the stage.
I'm
Honestly, we won't throw tomatoes, chairs, or anything else at you.
Right, so you want me to... Right, okay. David, we're coming back to you. We'll go to you first then.
Chris Lowe says
Oh my, sorry,
Okay.
I just confused
Right, Chris.
everything there.
Right, Julio, who's ever run it, sorry, Chris Lowe is trying to get in and is in the waiting room, John, and he can't get in.
Oh, well, Ali's keeping an eye on the waiting room, so...
Okay, so we've got someone trying to get in. David, can we go back to Texas, please? And can you start? And then,
Yes.
I call you Mario. Maria. Maria, would you go second, please?
Indeed. Do you know, I haven't got a joker. I'm just going to say whatever comes out of my mouth. That's all right, isn't it?
I hear your husband says that that's fine. Okay.
He does. He'd have to. He could say nothing less.
Anyway, so we'll do that, and then we'll put a batting order in place. But David, if you care to go first from America, we'd be delighted.
Can you hear me okay?
I do, yes.
Okay, good. Because sometimes I have some, audio problems. Well, I'm going to start off with puns. And a lot of people think that puns are the lowest form of humor. I disagree. I think puns are very high up on the order of humor because it deals with wordplay. And as storytellers, we all know about wordplay. So here we go. The first one is rather long, and the second one is really short. So we'll start with the long one first. Well, it turns out that many of you probably have heard of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, who are two of our Western heroes, especially when I was growing up. So this is a story about them, which includes the pun. Turns out that one day, Roy just woke up in the worst mood you have ever seen in your life. Oh, he was snorting and a ripping and a farting and a burping and just not in a good mood, shall we say. He got all dressed up and he went down to have breakfast. And there was Dale, his ever-present and lovely wife, cooking breakfast, and he was, and she said, Dale, I'm Dale. You know that? You listen to me. Roy, you're in such a bad mood. Why don't you just go to town and just see what you can find and see what you can do? Just get out of the house. So that's what he did. He saddled up Trigger and he rode into town and he tied Trigger to the hitching post. And he went walking down this little board sidewalks and pushing people away and all this other good stuff and walking behind people and moving them out of the way. And all of a sudden he stopped. Because there in the window of the most wonderful general store was the most beautiful pair of cowboy boots he done ever seen in his whole life. Oh, he was entranced. So naturally he went inside and he bought those boots. And he brought them out and he was happy and he said, howdy do to everybody. And he tipped his hat to the ladies and said hello to the young'uns. And he shook hands with their fathers and the other men. And he got back on his horse, Trigger, and he was holding those boots. And they just riding home, just having the greatest old time. And they got to this one area in the way home that there was this mountain lion. And this mountain lion done jumped and he grabbed those boots out of Roy's hands and he took off. He just hightailed it away. And Roy, I'm gonna get those boots back. And he turned Trigger around, and he was chasing him, and he was chasing that mountain lion that had those boots in his mouth, and they were crossing chasms, and they were ravaging ravines. And all of a sudden, Roy cornered that mountain lion on top of a hill, and that's when the fight done start. And oh, they was pulling and pushing and pulling and pushing, and just ripping those boots all to pieces. And all of a sudden, Roy just came down with his head and went, bam, right on top of the mountain lion, knocked the poor cat out. Well, he was right, and he tied those legs up, and he threw that mountain lion across the back of Trigger, and he picked up those ripped up boots, and he went back home, and he came in, and Dale came out, and she said, she looked at him, and she looked at the boots, and she looked at that cat all tied up on the back of Trigger, and she looked at Roy, and she said, "Pardon me, Roy, is that the cat that chewed your new shoes?" And I have one real short one right now. Thank you. If you're not familiar, look up the song "Pardon Me, Boy, Is That the Chattanooga Choo Choo?" But anyway, this is a very, very short one, and it's for all of us who love classical music. Now, we all heard of Johann Sebastian Bach. Oh, and he was prolific in his writing of cantatas and sonatas and all this other good stuff. So it was known that every Sunday, Bach would have a different cantata for the choir to sing in church. But they had to go through all these rehearsals and rehearsals and rehearsals, because if you've ever sung Baroque music, you know it can be a major pain. So they would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And soon that choir got really tired, and they told him that they were hungry. They needed to eat to get their energy back. So he said, "All right, you can bring your lunch." And so they did. And that, my friends, is the origin of the box lunch.
Right,
That's
okay.
it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Right. And so Marie then, who I see, by the way, for those you don't know how famous she is, she's doing the Wolverhampton Literature Festival next month with a couple of people I know very well. And that would be a great gig. There's three of them from all three different backgrounds. So anyway, Maria, so...
Well, you know what? It's great to be here. I was just sitting here thinking, because I've been at Nottingham University all day with students, right? Digitally, of course. And I am now, I only remembered like about 10 minutes ago, John. So I'm sitting here in my dressing gown. But that's all right, because that's what Scouse women do. Those of you that, you know, like I know there's some Americans here. I'm originally from Liverpool, which is, you might know, from the Beatles were from Liverpool. So Liverpudlians are called Scousers. I'm not sure whether I'm a Scouser anymore or a Liverpudlian, because let me tell you something, right? Women in Liverpool will wear their dressing gown out to shopping. Who's been to, I'm saying Gary and Shane there. And have you been to Liverpool? Because John, you know, you were talking about Lichfield. I had a party, right? And I've got lots of sisters. One of my sisters was staying in a posh hotel in the middle of Lichfield. I said to her, "Rachel, before you go back home, I'll drop in and I'll have a cup of coffee with you at about 11 o'clock in the morning." So I was waiting in the lobby for our Rachel to come down, right? And she swans down in a full head of curlers. That is that is acceptable. That's what, if you go into Tesco's, Aldi, whatever during the day, Liverpool women will have curlers in their hair, their dressing gowns on as they're walking around, because they are getting ready. They are getting ready to go out. And I don't think I'm a proper Scouse woman anymore, because I went to one of my, I'm from a very big Liverpool Catholic family, right? I went to one of my nieces. It was my niece's first Holy Communion about a year ago. And it was at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, right? So I had to leave here at 6:30 in the morning to get there for 8:30. Well, I mean, I hadn't even brushed my hair. I didn't have any makeup on or nothing like that. I turned up at this church, which at 8:30 in the morning was absolutely packed, right? It was absolutely packed, mostly with women, and their kids were all ready to do their first Holy Communion. But these women, right, they must have got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, taking those carelers out, taking their dressing gowns. They looked like they were going to some really posh function. You know, they have the full lot on, like the full cuprinol effect. That's a tan in Liverpool, the scouse brows, the lot. I was sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, you know, 8:30 in the morning, they're fully done up. But it was when the kids went to make their first Holy Communions in their little white dresses and all of that. And I was talking to one of my sisters and I said to her, oh, the children look lovely. And she said, yeah, they do, don't they? But Father Patrick said, you know, they had to ban the headwear. I said, you what? My sister said, yeah, Father Patrick said they had to ban the headwear. I said, what are you talking about? She said, and this is true, right? Kids were coming up to receive their first Holy Communion, and their mums had put a gadget inside the dresses, so when they switched it on, their little headgear lit up and flashed. That is Liverpool. That is Liverpool right there. Anyway, I'm digressing. I am going to tell you a quick story now. And this is about my dad's mate, Frank, who my dad was a plasterer and he worked on building sites, you know, for years and everything. And Frank got a job, a really good job in a factory. It was a carpet factory, a floor, you know, they laid floors and all that. Anyway, he got promoted quite quickly. And in fact, within a couple of years, he was the manager of that factory. And he was so good at his job that his boss started to send him out to other places. He was a really great representative. And he went to different places in England, and then to Scotland, and then to Ireland. And then he started getting sent abroad. Well, anyway, he got sent to this really rural part of Russia, right? And his wife, Margie, was a lovely woman and did have the cuprinol and the careless the lot. She said to him, hey Frank, hadn't you better learn some of the language because you're going to have to make a speech when you get there to the workers? He went, no, it'll be all right, love. I won't need to bother. She went, fair enough. Didn't bother. He was a little bit arrogant. Anyway, he gets over there and he goes to the factory and he meets the head honcho and they have a bit of a conversation. The head honcho speaks English, so everything's going well. And then he says to Frank, you know, you can come out now and you can speak to all of our workers. So Frank's feeling pretty good. He's standing there. He starts speaking to them, saying to them, you and I, we will work together. We will be comrades together. And suddenly all the workers go, look, Yermo! Thinks this is going well. He says, we will be standing shoulder to shoulder. Look, Yermo! We will work so that flooring and carpet laying will never be the same again. All of them in one voice shout, Black Yermo! Well, Frank thinks to himself, I've done really well here. And the head honcho says to him, well, Frank, I think it's time for you to get your plane now. He says, yes. Before you go, let me take you outside. Let me show you some of our land. And Frank goes outside, and I mean, it is beautiful. It's rural. And he sees in the distance some cattle. And he says, oh, can I go? Can I go and have a look? You know, in my country, we have beautiful landscape. We have rural land just like that. Can I go and have a look at the cows? And the head fella says, my friend, they aren't cows. They are a field of bulls. Yes, we brought them down today. And Frank says, oh, I don't mind. I'd still like to go and have a look. And the head honcho says to him, help yourself, off you go, but please, mind you don't stand in the Pluck your mo.
Right. Thank you very much.
I don't know if there's anyone who can translate for me then.
Right, so I've got an order. Well, I'm just going to take it as we come. So I'm going to do one, then Norman, Perrin to do one, Cosmo, then Gary. So we'll go at that order, and I'll keep adding to the order. So I'm going to do one, then Norman, then Cosmo, then Gary, and we'll take it from there. And don't worry about being left out. And Chris, don't worry about being first. Okay, we'll put you on in a minute. Okay, and I won't do Malcolm's. I'm going to do one about a fella you've never heard of. He's gone from history. I think his name is Donald Trump. Now, he is now the ex-president, they call him over there. But this was last week, and it was just in his last week of his presidency, and he was down in Florida. He decided, because he'd been invited, and it was the only place that he'd been invited to all week, was the local primary school. So he turns up at the local primary school, and the headmistress comes in, and he's talking to what they call in the States their kindergartens. Now, kindergartens are the 4, 5, 6-year-olds, and there's about 20 of them now. And he comes in, and the headmistress turns around and says, "This is Donald Trump. He's the president of the United States of America. He's come to visit us. He's going to sit down. Has anybody got any questions?" So he sits down, and he's standing and he's waiting, and this little boy puts his hand up. And he says, "Stand up, little boy." He said, "What's your name?" He says, "My name's Harry." "And how old are you, Harry?" He said, "I'm 5 years old." And he goes, "Nice to meet you, Harry, who's 5 years old. What's your question for the President of the United States of America?" And Harry says, "I haven't got one question, I've got 3. "Oh," says Donald Trump. And he turns around, and his advisors come in, and he goes, "It's all right, I've got it. He's only 5. He can ask me 3 questions. So what are your 3 questions?" He said, "In your term as a presidency, why did you move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Everybody knows Jerusalem's an international city and it shouldn't have any embassies in it at all. Why did you build a wall from coast to coast between America and Mexico? Everybody knows that immigration's been the best thing, and the whole of our country is built on immigration. There was no one living here when in the 1700s. Why did you stop all the people coming? And thirdly, why did you pull out of the Paris Accord? Everybody knows that was just good people trying to save the planet." And Donald Trump's going, hang on a minute. And just then is what they call the recession bell goes. And this bell goes, and all the kids look around and goes, "Great, it's what we call playtime." And they all hold hands, and they all skip out the door, and they're all playing in the playground. And about 20 minutes later, they all come back in, and the headmistress comes in, and she sits down. She said, "We've got a really nice visitor for you. His name is Donald Trump. He's in the last week of his presidency, and he's found time to come and talk to us, the kindergarten at our school in Florida. And now I want you to welcome him and give him a good hand reception. He's going to sit down, and we can have a Q&A with him. That means we can ask him questions, and he'll give us the answers." And in comes Donald Trump there with his big coat, and Melania's there with him this time with one of them flat hats. And all the kids sit down, and he introduces himself and says, "Has anybody got any questions?" And this little girl puts her hand up. And he turns around and goes, "What's your name?" She goes, "My name's Sophie." "Oh, hello, Sophie." He said, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm 6, because it was my birthday yesterday, and the day before I was 5. "Oh," says Donald Trump, "well, congratulations on your birthday for yesterday. My name is Donald Trump. Have you got any questions for your president?" And she stands up and she says, "I haven't got one question. I've got 5. "5, says Donald Trump. Melania sat there, she goes, 5? All his advisors are there. He goes, "Don't you worry about it. I'm the president of the United States. I've been the president for 4 years now. Ask your questions. I'm sure I've got the answers for them." Well, the little Sophie stands up and goes, "Mr. President, why did you move the embassy from the United States from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Everybody knows that Jerusalem should be an international city and shouldn't have any embassies in it. Why did you build a wall from coast to coast, right the way across between us and America, us and Mexico, to stop all the people immigrating to our land? Everybody knows America's been built on immigration. It makes us a great nation. And why did you pull out of the Paris Accord? Everybody knows there were nice people trying to make the planet a better place. Why did we have a break 20 minutes earlier? And what have your goons done with my friend Harry?"
Out of the mouth of babes.
Yeah, well, that's the joke we've been telling over here, David, for about 2 years now, mate.
Thank you. You ought to hear some of the ones we tell, but I can't do it right now because we probably have a mixed audience.
Yeah, we're looking for appropriate jokes, but I thought that was appropriate. Right?
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Maria, my wife comes from Stockton-on-Tees, and that's another place where they walk around supermarkets with all their headgear on. They call it the Headgear over there, for that side of the country, and they're either from Durham or from Yorkshire. And they say, we're going out in the headgear, and they sometimes wear a scarf over the top of it.
Yeah. Can you remember when Hilda Ogden used to do it? She used to rock that look.
No,
Yeah.
Hilda,
Viva Sharples.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
They were fashion icons, those women.
You do have to remember, though, that although she's from Stockton-on-Tees, nobody's perfect, so don't hold that against her.
Right, well, Malcolm, if you want to explain that comment to my wife, you carry on.
No, I'm only saying because I'm in a room on my own and I'm safe.
And I will tell Jan what you said. Don't you know about it?
I do have a story, by the way, Mike. Or
Pardon?
whoever's. I do have a story for tonight.
Okay, well, I'm going to, I said Norman next, then Cosmo, then Gary. You can go next after Malcolm. Okay, so the order now will be Norman, Cosmo, Gary, and then Malcolm. Okay, so we go, that's Norman next. Where are you, Norman? There we are. Now,
Norman has to unmute himself.
he thinks I'm the biggest joke in creation because I've worked out where Canada is just about.
By the way, I just read this morning. The first thing that Biden did was to pull out, to go back into the Paris agreement, right? Ted Cruz, and evidently this is a true thing, he tweeted, "Why should we be concerned about the climate of Paris, France? We should be attending to our own cities."
He said that.
Or something, words to that effect. Can't make these things up.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the responses was, at least with the Versailles Treaty, bought a lot of pieces of the people in Versailles.
Well, anyways, I have couple short pieces, and hearing some of these stories I heard as a kid in the Ottawa Valley in the schoolyard. Okay. Nazardine was walking along a cliff's edge, and he stumbled and crumbled, and he fell, and he landed down below where some hikers were going by, and they saw him hit the ground, and they ran up to him and said, "My God, man, what happened? What happened to you?" "I don't know. I just got here myself." Once, wait, I'm sorry, I never did understand that one. What do we say? There was a man who was walking along. He was traveling to a town, and he came to a crossroads, and he saw some people sitting there by the crossroads, obviously resting on their journey. And one of them was a couple guys playing chess, and he said, "Hi, what are you doing playing chess out here in the middle of nowhere?" He says, "Well, we're real chess fiends. There's a tournament coming up in the next town, and we're on our way to that. And we're just taking a break and playing chess because we love chess." And so he went over to the other man who was dressed in a clerical robes and a hood, etc. And he said, "Excuse me, but what are you doing here?" And he says, "Well, I'm a friar, and I'm a traveling friar, but I received a dream. And the dream was that the Holy Virgin would appear in a vision at the crossroads. And so I'm here hoping that this dream will come true." And the man walked along thinking to himself and making up a little tune to the thoughts that he had, which was, "Chestnuts resting by a hoping friar."
No. Oh my God, love it.
That's my little contribution.
Right, well, Okay.
Thank you, Norman.
So the order's now going to be Cosmo's next, then Gary after that, Malcolm, Chris, then Paul. Okay. So we're going to Cosmo now and then to Gary. Okay. Cosmo, where are you? You need to unmute yourself, mate. You need to unmute yourself. Cosmo, you need to have unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
I think he's doing it deliberately.
Perhaps it's mime.
How back? Yay!
Hey!
Some of you got it. For the rest of you, I think I'm in the wrong place. Hey,
I
listen
kept
up
my mouth closed.
for real. Yeah. You probably know me too well, John.
But are you in a real tent or a fake tent, Cosmo?
Normally it'd be with a microphone that ain't been switched on, but I thought, fuck it, let's try a Zoom gag. Yeah. Well, I'm totally new to this game, pretty green. It's been a crazy Zoom week for me. I spent the first 8 months of lockdown denying computer realities and saying I'm not doing any entertainment online. I am a live performer. Now I find myself here with you guys. It's nice to see you all. So cool. And from what I can work out, it's from the far corners of at least the northern hemisphere anyway. Cool. Well, I've got loads of gags. I usually let the audience decide. You can have a true story or you can have some gags. I'll do you a gag just so you get an idea of what the gags are like. It's a quick one, this one. Dakar walks into a bar and the barman says, will it be the usual, sir? And Dakar says, I think not. Disappears.
Right. Okay, well, if it's my choice, we go to gags. Now, I understand from my friend John that you were from the circus.
I am from a circus, yes, foolhardy folk circus.
Well, when I was working for Chipperfield Circus, Mary Chipperfield, all those
Mary,
years ago, right, they used to tell a joke about two lions were walking down through the middle of Trowbridge in Wiltshire.
Yeah, I know the one.
One turned to the other and said,
the lions are getting clever now. They're walking around in pairs with one eye closed.
No, no. The one
not that one. It's not that one.
No, it's not that one. Two lions are walking through the town of Trowbridge in Wiltshire, and one turned round to the other, and it's quiet round here. There doesn't seem to be anybody here at all. Go on, you go on, Cosmo. Okay.
All right, I know that one as well. Yeah. Two cannibals boiling up a clown. Does yours taste funny? We digress. So, what was it? Real gags or real stories?
Do real gags.
Real gags. Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, we're in lockdown, and you've got to be like compassionate and stuff like that. So not today, but a couple of days ago, I was walking down the road, and I glanced across onto the other side of the road, and there was this old boy there with his walking stick, walking along like that, shaking away he was, and he was crying his eyes out. So I wandered over crossed over, I thought I'd be a good Samaritan, good citizen, and that. I tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, excuse me, mate. I said, are you okay? Can I help you? You obviously look very upset. He went, yes. I said, well, what's the problem, mate? He said, well, he said, about 3 months ago, he said, there I was on holiday in Sweden to Norway to see the Northern Lights, and I met this beautiful woman. It was love at first sight. She's an absolute Aphrodite. And we married 2 weeks later. I said, that's fantastic. He's crying his eyes out. I said, and what happened? He said, well, he said, every morning, he said, I wake up, there's poached eggs, the morning newspapers, a glass of orange juice. I sit down, she gives me a little massage, and my day starts. It's beautiful. I said, wow, that's amazing. He says, come lunchtime, he says, dinner's on the table, then we go for a walk. We walk down to the river, we feed the ducks and bread. She sits and she reads poetry to me. I said, that's amazing, bloke. He says, yeah. He's crying his eyes out, the old boy. He must be about 80. He says, and come the evening, we have a 3-course meal, the best wine that money can buy, a live fire, rugs in front of it, and we make mad tantric love for 3 or 4 hours. I said, my God, I said, I'd die for that. Why on earth are you crying? He said, I can't remember where I live. There you go. So we could do a real one. Let's do a real one, quick one, and then I'll get going because I've got to go somewhere else in a second or two. So we were up at the. You might like this one, Maria, and some of you other people that you're all quite relatively old. You probably remember Margaret Thatcher. She's a bit like Trump. Forget her as soon as we possibly can. But we were up at the Gateshead Garden Festival. We were working there. It was a way to try and keep clowns in work during the Great Recession of the 80s. And we had this gig, and every day we had to get up in the morning. This milk cart would arrive with this lad driving it, sort of Geordie lad, lovely bloke, and he'd put all our kit on this milk cart, drive us through the site to where we were going to perform. Every morning it was the same. I'm bloody knackered, I am. I'm bloody knackered. I'm going to get the sack, man. I'm going to get the sack. I'm bloody knackered, man. I'm bloody knackered. And he'd drive us there. We thought he was a nice enough chap. He'd have a bit of banter with us, but it might be a few matchsticks short of a box. But bloody knackered, man. I'm bloody. And this went on 2 or 3 weeks. Then suddenly, one morning, the true thing is, we woke up at 4 o'clock. There was fucking racket everywhere. There was loads of coppers and police and plainclothes people everywhere. They woke us up, they started looking through our caravans and everything. And apparently the field literally next to where we were parked, a helicopter was arriving with Margaret Thatcher on board. She was going to go for a wander around the site, see her handiwork. So, bloody hell, 4 o'clock in the morning, we don't need that. About 6 o'clock, the helicopter arrives. We get a little bit more shut eye. About 8 o'clock-ish, this lad turns up. I'm bloody knackered, I am. I'm bloody knackered. I'm going to get the sack, man. I'm going to get the sack. We said, you're knackered. And we got all the gear together. And we actually, what we did, not part of the gag this, but we got this big gun with a rubber bendy sack. We thought we'll hide that under the table and we'll have a little pop shot out with it says bang when you fire it. And anyways, we go there. Start the first show about 11 o'clock. Show finishes. This bloke sitting behind us having his cup of tea and his fag. Bloody knackered, man. I'm bloody knackered. We all go backstage. Margaret Thatcher turns up. She looks over and she comes wandering around to the back where we are. And she looks at the sitting there just recovering from the show. And she goes up to this lad on the milk cart. He's just sitting on the edge of it. She holds out her hand to him. He goes, scissors, I win. We cracked up, mate. I'm bloody knackered. I'm going to get the sack, man. I'm going to get the sack. And he got the sack, poor lad. Anyway, thanks for that, everyone. Thank you. See you around. Yeah.
Thanks, Cosmo. Thanks for popping in. Go to your next. Go down the virtual highway to your next gig.
I will. Yeah.
We do a story round on a Sunday evening, Cosmo. Why don't you come in and I know some circus stories. So
okay, Mike. Yes, Sunday is it?
So
Yeah, 6 o'clock in the evening. This Sunday.
Oh, the one I did last week, John. Yeah.
Did you pop in?
No,
you did Monday, didn't you?
I did Monday. There you go. It all fades into one for me.
No, but it's a story round.
Story round on a Sunday.
It's on a Sunday at 6 o'clock. I'll tell you stories about Mary Chipperfield and Roger Crawley.
Okay, you do that, Mike.
Yeah, okay, you probably met him.
You know, Jerry Cottle passed away. Did you know that?
Who?
Jerry Cottle.
Oh, had he? Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, he was 75. I'll tell you a few stories about Jerry as well.
Yeah, right. That's the date between you and me. Okay, so we're going on to Gary, aren't we? Yes, Gary, and then Malcolm, then Chris, then Paul. Okay.
Well, hi everybody.
Don't forget Mike Faculty somewhere. I think Mike's down.
Oh, I'll get you in, or I'll get you in.
I know you will.
Just because I got you down last, don't you worry about it. So when you're working with a great and good Marie, bloody hell. Right? Go on then, Gary, over to you, mate.
All right. So I used to live in Newcastle upon Tyne, way. And so a lot of women up there used to come out in the mornings in their dressing gowns and or their pajamas and walk down to the shop and buy milk or take the kids to school in the pajamas.
Yeah.
Quite an unusual sight. And I also worked at the Gateshead Garden Centre, but not Garden Centre, Garden Festival, but not Not when Maggie Thatcher was around. I was in a different city in those days. But anyway, so where did this story come from? I can't. I think I heard this story at the at Festival at the Edge in about 2003 or 4. So it has to be true. And it was all about what was her name? Mary. That's right, Mary. You know, Mary had a bit of a checkered life. It hadn't really gone the way that she had planned, and she found herself standing at the doors to a convent, and she decided that she's going to dedicate the rest of her life to the service of God. And so she'd come to this convent and was just about to go in, and because she realized that a lot of the trouble that she'd gotten herself into throughout her life had been because of a loose mouth. She didn't know when to stop, and so she decided that she would go for a silent order, because if she went to a silent order, then she couldn't possibly get into any kind of trouble. And so the gates opened and she was ushered in and shown around, and she met Mother Superior, and Mother Superior told her about how things would run, and she was given her, I don't think you call them robes, do you? Whatever it is that nuns wear, she was given the full outfit, and then she was shown around the place and shown to her cell and said, next morning, come down to breakfast and I'll introduce you to the rest of the nuns. So next morning, she gets dressed and she comes down. They have their early morning hymns and the rest of it. And she comes into the breakfast room, and Mother Superior stands up and says, now then, sisters, I have an announcement. It's very, very lovely day for us, because we have a new member to our convent, and I'd like to introduce Sister Mary. Now, as we all know, this is a silent order, and so we only actually get to speak once every 5 years, one sentence. And so before your 5 years of silence begin, Mary, I'd like to invite you to say something. And Mary said, well, thank you. These clothes, they're a bit stiff and a bit itchy. Well, thank you very much, said the Mother Superior, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say in 5 years' time. And so Sister Mary, she went out and she went into the beautiful gardens there, and she learned a lot about herbology, and she learned all of her prayers, and she learned all of the hymns and everything. And 5 years rolled by, and the time came for her to speak again. And Mother Superior, at breakfast time, she said, well, sisters, as you all know, in our order, we only get to speak once every 5 years, and you all get a turn when it's on the anniversary of your arrival. And today is the anniversary of the arrival of Sister Mary, and we'd like to invite her to stand up and say her one sentence. And Sister Mary stands up and she says, well, thank you very much. The beds are a bit hard. Well, thank you very much, said Mother Superior, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say next time. And so Sister Mary went about the business of a convent for the next 5 years, doing whatever they do at the convent there, and 5 years rolled by and it was the anniversary again. And so breakfast time came, and the Mother Superior stood up and she said, well, as you all know, everybody, it's a silent convent, and we all get to say one sentence every 5 years. And I'd just like to invite Sister Mary to stand up, because it's the anniversary of her arrival in our wonderful convent. And Sister Mary, perhaps you'd like to give us your sentence. And so Sister Mary stood up and said, thank you. The food is a bit cold. Well, thank you very much, said Mother Superior. We look forward to hearing what you have to say next time. And, well, you know, the days rolled into weeks, and the weeks rolled into months, and the months rolled into years, and 5 years later, it was the anniversary of her arrival. And the Mother Superior greeted everybody at breakfast, said, as you all know, it's a silent order here, and we all get to speak our sentence once every 5 years on the anniversary of our arrival, and you all get your chance. And today is an anniversary of the arrival of Sister Mary, and we'd like to invite her to stand up and say her sentence. And Sister Mary stood up and said, thank you, I'm leaving. And Mother Superior looked at her and she said, well, thank goodness for that, because you've done nothing but complain since the day you arrived.
Without dropping names, which means I'm just about to, I learned that one first from Johnny Campbell over in Northern Ireland, and it was all to do with an Irish monastery. So an Irish Catholic one in Shannon, if I remember right. So, right, so he said, Gary, then we're going Malcolm, Chris, then Paul, then Lucy. Are you doing one, Lucy? Wave if you are, or nod your head if you, or shake your head if you're not. Right, okay. So Malcolm next, then Chris, then Paul. Okay. Yes, John, and then you after.
No, not me. Not me. Michael, I was waving at Cos, who was going at that moment.
Right, okay. No, Michael, then Michael Flatley after that then. So Malcolm, Chris, Paul, okay? Then Mike, okay? So Malcolm, you're next. Where are you? Where you gone?
I'm here. I'm at the top.
go,
Well, I'm
there
on the
you
top
go.
of my screen. I have no idea where I am on your screen.
Yeah, you keep moving. And
Yeah.
Keith, I know you're there as well.
So, yeah, well, I just start off saying that actually are we past the 9 o'clock deadline?
Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking the first time I ever had sex, I was terrified. That's because I was on my own.
Yeah.
Right. Serious stuff now. As many of you will probably know, that in the 1850s there was major immigration from pretty well everywhere in Europe to America, and my story occurs about that time. When people arrived in New York on Staten Island, they were given a plot of land, and that was theirs. And some people did well; they got very fertile lands, and they ended up with farms, and other places got less out of it. My story concerns a guy called John Smith, fairly unusual, well, fairly unexciting name, and his family, and they went over from Liverpool and landed in New York along with every other immigrant at the time, and they were given a plot of land, and off he went with his family on the wagon train. In those days, moving from anywhere to anywhere else across America was a very slow and rather dangerous business. But eventually they got down to where they were given, and that was a place in the far west of Texas, in what is now known as the the Chihuahuan Desert. One of the characteristics of that area is that it is desert, and there is very little water around, and the whole place, the major vegetation is creosote bushes. Basically, that's the major thing that grows there. So when he got there with his family, he was very disappointed. He had got ideas to open a cattle farm or a sheep farm, anything that on the farming side of it, and this land did not look like it was going to work with that. Nevertheless, he started making land clearance, so he got rid of got rid of the bushes. But you can't just get rid of bushes over there. You have to do something with it, and he decided to burn them. And so he'd take up these creosote trees and creosote bushes and burn them. And what was left over was a very, very black, greasy powder. And when you got it on your hands or anywhere else, it was very, very difficult to get off, and it just lasted and lasted. This he was doing to try and clear the land to put some cattle in there. Now, this went on for quite some time. He had quite a lot of work to do with his family on there. But interestingly, then, he had worked out something to do with it. And it worked out that if you could package this right and treat it right, you actually got something that was a makeup, like a lady's makeup. Now, he was actually based now on a town which is now Marfa, and which was in the 1880s became a water stop. So it was a small settlement there. And like a lot of small settlements, there was a saloon and all the other things. And the ladies of the bar started wearing this greasy black stuff on their faces as part of their makeup. And it turned out to be quite popular. Now, again, in the 1880s, huge expansion of American immigration, big steamships, big rail expansions, and the town, as I say, it's now Marfa, it didn't have a name in those days, was created as a water stop for the locomotives that were travelling through. So it started to get a lot busier than it is now. Oh, sorry, than it was before. And so a bigger town came up, and it was on the rail link, and people began to hear about this makeup that John Smith was creating. Being on the new railway system, word spread quite quickly across the western states, and eventually he had requests coming in from most of the big towns, and he started his business by getting his family to start shops in various major places, El Paso, Fort Summer, and eventually they had their own stores there. And the first one was actually in Fort Summer, which is quite, I just imagine it was a fort, and then El Paso. And then they went on to Alamogordo and on and on and on. And eventually they had a whole string of shops on the West Coast. Not the West Coast, on the West Bank. On the side, and again, with the railways being as they were able to actually start moving their makeup over to all of America at the end of the day. And far from being at the end of the day a cow farm, he ended up with a very, very profitable business selling this greasy black powder. So much so that all the big cities on the eastern coast and the Central America started just selling them on a store basis. They had opened up the stores there, and they bought the stuff in and sold it. And this went on well into the early 1900s, when chemical and French manufacturers started doing the stuff. So he actually arrived in America as a very poor person, and when he died, he was one of the richest people in America. And they actually made a film out of this some years ago, and they called it the Texas Chainsaw Mascara.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to have a prize for the worst pun. Yes, you got there. Well done, Malcolm.
Yeah, it was a bit. In fact, I told it before because you've heard it before, but I decided to put some meat into it today. So I just learnt a lot about Martha, the Chihuahuan Desert, and all the other bits and pieces. Now I know this, I shall have to be a bit more professional with it. But before I go, yes. In Australia, the outback is renowned to be inhabited by spirits and ghosts. And do you know what the local people in that area call the ghosts in the outback?
Go on.
Apparitiones.
Right.
Yeah, you can go.
Where's Norman? Right.
Right, I'm going now. Bye.
Right, so we're going to Chris, then Paul, after Paul, Keith, and then after Keith, Shane. Okay.
We're going to have a pun contest sometime. A lot more where mine came from.
Right. Okay, we can do this. And if we're going to do it from one side of the pond to the other, I'm sure we can have a go at that as well. But
your challenge is accepted, Norman.
But you don't know, we're in the company of the great and good here, John, because this is the chairman of the Society for Storytelling here. This is one of the, and what's more, he's just had a birthday. But he had a bad paper round because he looked pretty good for 60. So.
I thought you weren't more than 16, Paul.
Oh, don't tell everyone.
Right. Mr. Jackson, sir?
Was it me? I thought it was somebody else.
Yeah, no, it's you. Yeah, sorry.
Two true stories. I was lucky enough for between 2005 and 2012 to be a carer as well as a storyteller. And as a carer, you meet amazing people. Most of the people I worked for were little old ladies. And there was this particular old lady called Mrs. Andrews. She was an ex-nurse. She was in her late 70s. Her husband had died some 10 years before. And she was what I would call a warrior. So every time I went to clean a kitchen or a bathroom, whatever I would do that particular day, she'd be worrying about something. And then one particular day, I think it was around about 2008, she said, "Oh, Mr. Jackson, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to move." I said, "What is it, Mrs. Andrew? What's your problem?" She was like, I can't get to the kitchen. It's too far away from the bedroom. I just don't know what to do." And for the next few weeks, this was all I ever heard. "Oh, Mr. Jackson, what am I going to do? I can't live here anymore." And then I walked in one morning, and I kid you not, she was sitting. I hadn't told you. She was incredibly religious. And I walked in, and I said, "You look better today, Mrs. Andrews." She said, "Oh, Mr. Jackson, the problem's been solved." I said, "Oh, what is it?" She said, God woke me up in the night, and he said, Edith, what you need is a tease maid." And it was true. And she didn't move. From that time on, all she had was a tease maid next to her bed. She didn't need anything else. It's a true
Right.
story. And one other true story, quick story. 4 years ago, it's topical, so I hope that Norman will like this, and Mike will like this, and David will like this, particularly. 4 years ago, I was at a book festival, and this lady had been shipped in on 2 weeks' notice to be the keynote speaker. And she got up onto the stage. She was a bit nervous, and she paced up and down, so we all thought, oh. And the lady who'd organised it thought, oh. She didn't say anything, and she had her hand on her head. And then she stopped and she said, "Donald. The problem is Donald." And then she paced up and down again, and she said, "Dear Donald, our new president." I don't know what to say, she said, "but I've got this idea. Dear Donald," she said, "what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you my 20 best books, particularly the ones I've written myself. I'm going to send them to you in the Oval Office. And because, Donald, I know you can't read. I know you're not going to read my books. In fact, I know that you're just going to stack them up next to your chair. And then, Donald, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring all my best friends who are writers, and I'm going to ask them to do the same thing, to send their favourite 20 books to you. And dear Donald, by the time they finish, there should be about 200 books. And with any fucking luck, the whole lot will fall down and kill you."
Yay!
True story.
Excellent, excellent.
And which literature festival was this?
It was a festival in Norfolk. It happened every year. And it was a true story. It's a true
I would have sent him an OED.
Yeah.
Right, well, we're going to Chris now. Yeah.
In case we run out, which I doubt we will, I have here 30 cracker jokes.
You're quite quiet, Chris. So.
Am I?
Well,
Better?
Yeah.
A lot better, yeah.
Oh.
No, now
You've
dead.
muted yourself now. You've muted yourself now. And can everybody else mute themselves as well, please? No, you're still muted, Chris.
He's not muted. His mute button's not on. He's just not coming through. Chris, we cannot hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, good.
First two jokes, and then I'll do a quick story. Why do crows like yoga? Anybody? Because it's good for their core.
Hey!
Close the door behind you.
Did you hear about the donut manufacturer who retired? He got fed up with the whole business. Anyway, a story now that I hope everyone will like, but especially for the female contingent. They will understand it probably better than most. There once was a woman who was absolutely gorgeous. She had a figure that was divine, and she was resented by all of her friends. This was because she had had 6 children, and she still had the flattest abdomen you could wish for, and a figure, as I say, that was hourglass-like. She was so beautiful and so tremendous that her husband started to drop her name and call her Mother of 6. She became resentful of this and said, I'm not just a mother, I'm an individual. I'm me. Call me by my proper name. And her husband said, oh, nonsense. Look at you, Mother of 6. You're absolutely gorgeous. As wonderful as the day I first married you. And you've had 6 children. You are truly Mother of 6. He said, you better start calling me by my name. I'm more than just a mother. And if we go to the works ball and dance in a couple of days' time, you better remember that. He said, oh, nonsense. Don't be silly. Anyway, a couple of days went by and she was standing in front of the mirror, brushing down a very lovely satin dress that clung to her silk-like figure. And he said, oh, Mother of 6. She said, I've warned you. I've warned you. Well, the dinner dance proceeded and the evening went on, and he was there with the rest of the executives talking to the chairman and the president, etc. And it got to about 11 o'clock at night. And he looked across the room to his wife and he said, ready to go in 10 minutes, Mother of 6? And she waved back, yes, Father of 4. That's it.
Right. Thank you very much, Chris. Right, so with Keith next, and then Shane, and then Mike. So we're going to Keith, who's got a wonderful old tractor.
Hello, everyone. This is a story about my friend, God rest his soul, called John. Now, John woke up one morning and he had a bolt through his neck. It was about, say, ½ inch, ½ inch in diameter. A bolt went through this way, head there, and there's a nut at the other end. I thought, what am I going to do with this bolt through my neck? And so he went to see the doctor. And the doctor looked at the bolt and felt it and moved it around. And says, the doctor didn't, I don't know what it, you must go and see my auntie that lives in the village. The old lady that lives in the village, she'll give you an answer. And so my friend John, he went to see the old lady that lives in the village. And when she opened the door, hello, John, I've been expecting you. And he said, well, what can I do but this bolt, this golden bolt that's through my neck? And she opened a book and she looked at it and said, well, this is what you're to do. You're to go to Much Wenlock at the next full moon and go to the churchyard of Holy Trinity and wait there at midnight and see what happens. And so John, he did. Just before the next full moon, he went off to Much Wenlock and he booked in at the Castle Arms. And as midnight approached on the next full moon, he went up to the churchyard of Holy Trinity and he sat there on the tombstone and waited for midnight. Dong, 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 right through to 12, dong. And out of the sky, down a moonbeam, came a fairy and landed on his shoulder. And the fairy had a golden spanner and it undid the nut of the bolt and put the nut and the bolt down. Then flutter, 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 flutter went over to his other shoulder, got hold of the head of the bolt and pulled it out. And then flutter, 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 flutter back up the moonbeam back into the sky. And John was so excited, so he just went to say thank you. He jumped up and said, and his head fell off.
Thank you, Keith. That happens all the time around Shropshire, that does. Right, so we're going to Shane then, Mike. So Shane, you're muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yes, thank you. So I've got 3 just short stories. 2 are very, very short, but they're all to do with Liverpool. Maria got me thinking about my Liverpool connections. So the first one is very short. So my mate's dad had a minivan because he was a foreman on a building site, and he loved Ipswich Town. It was when Ipswich played in the what was the first division, that was the Premier League at its day, and they were playing Liverpool, and he said, would you like to come and watch Liverpool and Ipswich play at Liverpool? And I said yes. So I went with my mate. Well, my mate sat next to his dad, and I sat in the back of this minivan. Well, I didn't sit in it, actually. I laid kind of on the floor, and I was on my haunches, so there was no seats in the back of this minivan, all the way from Suffolk up to Liverpool in the back of a minivan, being tossed around here and there, hours and hours and hours of driving. But it was still a wonderful experience, because to stand in the cop, and perhaps our American friends, I don't know if you'll know what the cop is, but it's the end at the Liverpool ground where everybody in the day, they all stood and they all sing You'll Never Walk Alone. And I was about 13 years of age. And I'll never forget that experience, because just this boom of voices and the scarves, and I got sort of squeezed and pushed, I don't know, 10, 15 feet along and then back as they sort of moved like a wave kind of thing. And it was just a very exhilarating experience. So that's my first Liverpool connection. My second one is, which I'm going to lead to the third, is my mate, Alan, who is a Scouser. And he moved to Suffolk in the same street as me with his family. And we were mates, we were muckers. And we loved Leo Sayer. And he took me up to the Liverpool Empire to see Leo Sayer back in the early 70s. So that's the second short story. But the main story I want to tell you about Liverpool, or the connection, is Alan's mum, Mary, 4'6", 7. If she turned sideways, you couldn't see her because she was as thin as a fag paper. But she was scary. She was a scary lady. I loved her to bits. But she was a scary lady. And I actually went out with her daughter, Sue. And one evening, we decided to go to Cambridge to go skating. And I can't remember if it was ice skating or roller skating, but it doesn't matter actually. But so a bunch of us went, and my girlfriend Sue couldn't come. So it was Alan's sister. She couldn't come. And Alan went with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend's sister came along, and 2 others, I think it was. And Alan had borrowed his mate's mother's Morris Minor Traveller. Now, I know Paul Jackson had one of those, I do believe. So we were all packed into this Morris Traveller. We went to Cambridge. We had a wonderful evening skating and whatever, lots of fun and all the rest of it. And then we were coming back out of Cambridge on the motorway. And Alan was, it wasn't a motorway, actually, it was a single track road, actually, dual track road. And Alan was a very speedy driver. And he liked to overtake and cut in just at the last minute. He was always scary to be around, actually. And he cut in really tight, and the kind of the Morris started to rock around. And I remember saying to him, stop messing around, Alan. But actually he'd lost control of the vehicle, actually. And it left the road. It went in between 2 trees, literally 2 huge trees, down an embankment onto its side, and it rolled over. Yeah, the bit I haven't told you yet is we'd also said there was 2 in the front, 3 or 4 of us in the back, and we'd picked up a hitchhiking RAF man and his big bag, and he was in the boot bit of the Morris Traveller. So we were all sort of tossed everywhere. We opened a window and we kind of got out sideways, kind of out of the, it was really, we were all shook up and all the rest of it. And we all got out, none of us were hurt. And Alan's friend, Tony, whose mother's Morris Traveller it was, Tony, we started chatting, and he leant against the Morris Traveller, well, the side of it, the underneath of it, and he put his hand straight on the exhaust pipe and burnt his hand and got blisters. So it was the only injury was him putting his hand on after the accident. So we had to take him to hospital because he'd burnt his hand sort of quite badly. So we all went to the hospital. Alan got on the phone, not on a mobile, it was a normal phone in those days, and he rang to his mum and dad and said, can you come and pick us up from Bury Snevens, where we live? So they said yes. So we're sitting in the hospital. Tony got his hand seen to and everything, and Alan was looking after his girlfriend, and his girlfriend's sister, she was much younger. She was maybe about 14. I was 16 or 17. She was about 14. She was really upset, and she went into some sort of shock. And I was just chatting to her and everything, and she was crying. And sort of 20 minutes, half an hour went by, and Alan's mum arrived with her husband. And I had my arm around this girl, comforting her, literally comforting her. And Mary saw me and she came storming across to me and she went, "You bastard!" And she slapped me around the face. And the nurse came out and heard the commotion. And the nurse said, "Could you take your fight outside, please?" And she made us go outside the front of the hospital. And now I was telling Mary, I was just comforting this young girl. It's a true story. Yes, and all I was doing was comforting this young girl who was just in shock, basically.
But did
and
she have
Alan
careless in, Shane?
Did she have what? Sorry. Did she have what?
Did she have careless in?
She didn't, but I do believe I've seen Mary in her house coat quite a few times, as it was called in those days. Yes.
I like Mary.
Yes.
Do you know all those stories, all the stories that people are telling? I'm having to restrain myself because every time someone tells a story, I'm wanting to tell a story back.
Yeah.
So you telling those stories now, I'm going, okay, I'll shut up. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Is that it, Shane? You got some more?
No, that's it really. I think, yeah, I can't think of any more at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I'm the same with Marie. And so I know I was up in Liverpool, Toxteth, and there's I came out of a pub at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was Christmas Eve, and there was a little 3-year-old little girl, and she was all dressed up. She didn't have curlers on. She was just all dressed up because it was Christmas Eve. And there was a pigeon there. She ran across this car park to try and catch this pigeon. And this pigeon flew away. And a voice from around the corner said, "Can't that family afford popper toys for that kid?" Right, so we said Shane, then we said to Mike. Yeah, we're going to Mike, and then I think it's only John left, unless there's anybody else who hasn't told a story but he wants to. And there's a couple of people around. There's a Liz Monk I've messaged, but I haven't got an answer back from. So it would be Mike and then John to finish if you're going to do one, John. So Mike next then. Okay.
Okay. David said about the, I wasn't going to do this, but he said about Bach's sonatas and cantatas. And it reminded me of Bach's most famous, very honest work, the Frank Sonata. Sorry, I thought if we're doing puns, why not? I was actually intending to talk about clothes tonight. I wanted to show you my favorite shirt. This is my favorite shirt. It's by Eddie Bauer in New York. And the reason it's my favorite, because it's quite an ordinary shirt, but I'm quite a fat bloke. And this shirt is a medium. It's in America, it's a medium. Over here, I'm 3XL, 4XL, get a tent, you fat bugger. But in America, I'm a medium. I don't talk to ghosts or anything, you know, it's just the shirt size. I'm a medium. So I thought I'd mention that before I go to my proper story about clothes. And it's about pirates, like most of my stories will be tomorrow on John's 6 o'clock show. And years and years and years ago, when pirates sort of were the scourge of the sea, there was this merchant ship, and it had a very brave captain, a very brave crew. And they were sailing along, and the lookout called down from the crow's nest, "Captain, looks like we've got a pirate ship coming up on us." And then he shouted down, "Looks like they're quite well armed, and they look like a hard lot." And the captain called the cabin boy, said, "Get me my red shirt." And he put on his red shirt. And then they fought the pirates. And they won. And then the next day, the same sort of thing happened. The lookout called down, "Captain, there's pirates coming at us. They look like a right hard lot." So he said, "Get me my red shirt." And he put on his red shirt, and they fought the pirates. And again, they won. And that night, one of the crew said to him, "Captain, why is it when we're fighting pirates, you put on a red shirt?" He said, "Well, if I'm wearing my white shirt and we fight pirates and I get wounded, the blood will show and it'll discourage people. So I wears the red shirt so no one will know." He said, oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I see that. And then blow me down the next day, the word comes down from the Crows, says, Captain, there's 3 pirate ships closing in on us. They look like a right hard cruise. We're going to win a hell of a fight. And the captain says to the Cannibal, get me my red shirt and my brown trousers.
Right, well, if we're going into Navy jokes, then we're going to be here for the next 3 hours, because Maria and I will probably know Liverpool is well known for its docks and its jokes, and it's all ships coming in and out and everything else. So when we finish here officially, we might just hang around and do a bit of, because this could go on for 3 days then. So I think, unless I've got it desperately wrong, and I don't think I have, everybody's told a story who wants to tell a story, apart from Mr. Rowe here. Right.
Oh my goodness.
Are you going to do one for us?
Yeah, I'll do one. Or I'll do one. I'm terrified of having to tell funny stories, because I once when I was at a poetry and music show called Stereo Graffiti with Nick Toxek, we played Hope Street Festival in this real hard pub in the middle of Hope Street, you know, and a southern performer doing poetry in a Hope Street pub of a vaguely humorous nature is a hiding of nothing. I learned more about performing that night than I did in 300 years, I think. There's loads of, all these stories bring up memories. Mentioning of Morris Travellers, I own 2. The first one cost me £2. And I put loads of scrap bits of another one in it, and I got £36 when someone hit a patch of ice and ran into me and wrote it off. So I come out after 2 years with a profit on that one. But that's not the story I'm going to tell. I'm going to tell has David left us from Texas? Doesn't matter. This is. I used to go to a folk festival in Texas called Kerrville Folk Festival, and I used to work crew there. And there was a Native American woman who went really rough stuff. She was going around on her wheelchair, and I was on breakfast crew, so I'd take her a dinner or a breakfast or dinner. I just used to look after her food, and she used to sit me down and tell me stories. And some of you would have heard me tell this, but. She said she told me that she used to be an executive in Houston, and she used to really annoy people in the boardroom, because she'd walk in with feathers in her head and all this sort of thing. And one day they called her. They said, "Look, we need to buy land. We're building the interstate round Houston, and we've got to buy all this railway land. Can you sort it out? And quickly, we want it done by next week." And it was a public holiday. And she said, "Yeah, I can do that. She said, no, don't try and help me. I'll do it all by myself. And if I say I need so much money, just give it to me, no questions asked. And I'll need to start my own company. I'll call it PFPBT." And so it was public holiday, so Tuesday was the first day, working day, and everything was done and dusted. And they're having a big celebration afterwards. And everyone's coming up to her and shaking her hand, going, "Nice job, Dee Dee. Nice job." And eventually the head of Union Pacific Railways came up to her and said, "Nice job. Good job, Dee Dee. But tell me, what does PFPBT stand for?" She said, "Pale face payback time. Have you any idea how satisfying it is for an Indian to close a railway?"
Yeah.
And on that, it's been a brilliant night, Michael. Thanks for taking it. I hope I dropped you in it quite accidentally, but it was you've run it magnificently. Thank you, and Paul, thank you for pushing it through the Society of Storytelling, and Mike for the Get a Word in Edgeways. Who had as much to do as the World Storytelling Cafe for putting tonight on. It's been a fantastic night. And it's time to unmute and have a natter, don't you think, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't push away. We're in the middle of a lockdown, and one of the things we picked up on this part of the country is when you do something like this, whatever genre you're in, whether you're playing music or telling stories or doing poetry, just stay on for a few minutes because there's a lot of lonely people out there. And I'm going to disappear for a second or two for the simple reason I'm beginning to run out of beer. And I'm going to go and find a couple of bottles.
But before you go, Mike, just answer this question.
Go on.
Well, yeah. The chickens and the turkeys had a football match, but the ref stopped it. Can you imagine why?
Go on.
Foul play.
Anyone?
Foul play.
Foul play.
Too many fouls. Yeah.
Yeah. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because it was stapled to the skinhead.
Get your beer, Mike. Get your beer.
I'm going to have a wine now.
Well, Maria, it's great to see you.
John,
Thanks for turning up tonight.
Oh, it's great to see you. I feel like I've represented the female contingent of the world on this.
Well, we did open it up to everyone, but you were the only one who was brave enough to volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what though? It's really interesting listening because there's as people tell those stories and tell those jokes and everything, your head is full, isn't it, of reactions to those stories. And like that, when Shane was talking about his experience of Liverpool, oh my goodness, it was so taking me back to how flipping, honestly, John, how rough and how violent my landscape was when I was growing up. It was extraordinary. You know, you were like when I went to school. I went to a convent school, and it was in the middle of. I passed my 11 plus. You know, I went to this grammar school. Once you got into the school, it was all tranquil and quiet. Getting off the bus to get to that school, it was in the middle of Smack City. That's what it was called, known as Croxteth was known as Smack City. The ice cream van that used to pull up outside the school would sell little tokes of heroin with your ice cream. I am not making this up. It was it was hard. It was really hard.
I used to deliver around Toxteth in the late 70s, and there's you know, it was like the side streets were the little shops were like sort of Fort Knox was shut.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just, I remember walking home from school one day and we had a particular uniform on because we were the grammar school kids, but as like as poor as anyone else. And the kids from the other school used to lob things at us. I just remember turning around and looking at Alison Hines, and she had this fringe, right, like a long fringe, and dangling precariously in the middle of their forehead was a turd that someone had thrown at her, poor girl. And she had really long fingernails, and I really remember seeing poor Alison Hines with these fingernails in the air going, ah, and no one else would get this excrement from her hair. It was not an easy a place to grow up, really. But it was also full of laughter and fun. Bizarre, isn't it? Laughter, fun, a lot of silliness, a lot of hilarity. And I reckon that I remember Christine McMahon talking about her ancestors in Yorkshire and saying how hard those women were. But I think it's because, you know, everyone had such tough lives. Anyway, yes. Thank you, folks, and thank you for evoking so many.
Thank you for leaving us that fantastic image.
You're welcome. You know, anytime you want an image of a turd in someone's fringe, I'm your woman.
I missed that, Maria, because I was out. Where was it you were brought up? where was it?
He's a Liverbird.
Belgravia.
Liverpool.
Yeah.
The thing about Liverpool is they have had some tough times, but their sense of humour brings you through. And if you're down, they will pick you up.
Yeah.
They really will. They will never leave you. I've always thought that about Liverpool. There's other places in the UK I wouldn't say that about, but Liverpool is. I've always found that to be so. I must admit. So.
Well, my mate that I was talking about earlier with his mother and everything, Alan, he moved to Australia at least 42 years ago. And he was a carpet fitter, and he's done very well. He's got a big company and all the rest of it. You'd never know he was a man of wealth because he's so down to earth. And he comes back to England because he's got a little property in England and whatever, and family. And he comes back to England at least once a year. He hadn't because of COVID, but at least once. And he always rings me and says, "Come on, Shane, either go out for a drink or go out for a meal," every single time. And it's like nothing's changed between us. And, you know, so I only see him once a year if I'm lucky, over 42 years. But it's like we go back to when we were, he's a couple of years old, 3 years older than me, but it's like we go back to when we were 17, 18, 19 and the fun that we had. It's still kind of there with us. He's got this leery sense of humor. He's just such a kind, great guy, really. Yeah.
There's some middle class people call some of the people that were round by ours characters. There were a lot of characters, Shane, when I was growing up. A lot of characters.
Talking of characters,
it's a cover-all word, isn't it? Characters, yes.
Come on, Chris, what are you saying?
I'm being
talking
polite.
of characters, Shirley and I went to Liverpool a few years ago, and we stopped, I think, opposite Lime Street Station. There's a Holiday Inn or something like that. And anyway, we stopped there. We had a great time, Beatles tour and the Liverpool docks and all that sort of stuff. But in the morning, we had a very entertaining lady come in. It was unintentional. Her and her family, and I don't know if they were Liverpudlians, but let us say they weren't the cream of society. And they'd all come in, and she was a bit overweight. And she insisted at breakfast to come in very overweight with stiletto heel shoes that didn't quite manage to support her. And as she walked to the breakfast bar, she waddled as the shoes collapsed underneath her each morning. And Shirley and I were in hysterics. I hope you didn't see us laughing, but we couldn't help it. Anyway.
Well, listen, I'll tell you whether she was a Scouser or not. Was she wearing curlers in her hair?
No, but it looked suspiciously like a dressing gown that she was wearing over the top.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Shane.
Yes, John.
As you mentioned, it's like we were going back. Your voice got more and more Suffolk. And I just,
you know what? It's so funny, John. If I go back and see any old mates from Suffolk, I just go back into this Suffolk talk, which it took me years to try and talk posh, John. And now I just have to step into Suffolk and I start talking like that. Again,
like
you know what I mean, boy? You know.
I know just how you feel, because people don't realise I come from Birmingham.
Yeah, Norman, you're going to have to get a translator when they start talking about Suffolk, mine. Okay.
I'm supposed to be an Ottawa Valley accent, but I lost it many years ago, and there's no recovery, I'm afraid.
So what accent have you got now then?
Well, what I sound like right now, which is, I think, is rather on the bland side. What would you call my accent?
American.
American, yeah.
East Coast.
That's what I call it. Yeah.
East Coast, Maine.
Yeah. No, it's Northern America. It's not Southern America.
Yeah, it's more Northern American. You know, I can try and put on a fake Newfoundland, Quebec accent, but I don't like doing that because it's, you know, I just throw in a ting, this, that, and the other thing, eh? But
what about Maine?
When I first, I didn't move up to Suffolk till I was 16, and I was working on the buses, and you don't realise how many words are specific to a town. And this mother was trying to get on the bus, and she goes, "Give me a hand with my tripper." And I thought, what the hell's a tripper, boy? And it's a pushchair. It's or a stroller, as it would be called now. And
living on the Welsh borders here, we've got a lot of the Welsh words in sometimes, and there's one that's used still quite a lot called nesh.
Yeah.
You hear from Yorkshire and the north of England, and it's used by the kids.
Yeah.
You know, it's in common parlance, but there's a lot of the Welsh ones that come in, and you can sit in the cafe sometimes in Ludlow and Oswestry on the border towns, and you can hear the mums talk to the children in Welsh, and particularly when they're being naughty, you know, a proper mum talking to a naughty little boy who's 3-year-old in full Welsh, and you know the language is full on. And the swear words have an impact on people if you understand them. If you don't understand the swear word because it's in a different language, it's got no meaning to you. So, and if you hear some of the Welsh swear words, you can tell the people in the room who understand them because they all go.
Well, on the buses, you know, I mean, I was the bus conductor when there was the open, you know, the open back where you could hang on a pole, and you could see people running for the bus. And if you like the look of them, you'd hold the bus. and I mean, you get a rough time for, especially when the women coming out of the factories, you know, you'd be a young bus conductor at their mercy, really. But it was always great, except if you got some snotty what's-it on the bus. But you had this enormous power as a bus conductor. And I remember once there was this woman, she said, yeah, there's these bells all down the side, you know, to stop the bus, press once. And, you know, she couldn't, you know, it was quite below her to press her own bell. So she went past the side, she goes, Conductor, I've just passed my stop. So I turned around and I said, yes, madam, you press the bell or else you'll go past your next one. And there's a whole bus just because we had all the factories on there, all the factory workers on there, they collapsed everywhere. But never mind.
When I left the Ottawa Valley, I left a lot of the language behind me, but one word which I don't use, and since there's not much of this substance anymore, but it's called packy snow. Anybody, any idea what it might be? Packy snow.
Packy snow.
Pressed down hard snow?
No, quite the opposite.
Right, in Sweden they have 921 words that describe snow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of words to describe how pissed off we are at winter, but it's snow that is just the right consistency, soft enough and warm enough to pack together.
Right. Okay.
And you can make snowman, you can roll it up and things like that. But it's the first time I used it in the South, it didn't go over well. Because the word, I didn't know what a packy was as a pejorative.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it in Wolverhampton.
No. Yeah, don't use it in England. Don't use it in England or Britain. Don't use it in Britain. Yeah.
I know, I would not. But then I found out something called packing snow, which is easier. But it's all moot. There's no snow here in Toronto. I can look out the window and it's no snow.
I think they got it over on the other coast.
Yeah.
My brother would had
Once I can say, sitting in Shropshire, we've got snow here today. So
yeah, and more tomorrow.
Yeah, we haven't had it for a couple of years, but there's some about at the moment.
I think Stephanie's comes on Sunday.
Yeah,
with the Amazon order.
Yeah, it won't snow on Tamworth because they're too posh over there.
Did anybody watch? Did anybody watch in the UK? Watch the One show tonight?
Yes. Saw Liz Weir.
Liz Weir was on the One show tonight at what was it? Lough the Vanishing Lake.
Oh yeah, it was
Liz Weir was.
There's a lake in is it Northern Ireland, Mary? Yeah. I'm pronouncing it Lough I can't remember. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah,
it's close enough anyway. Yeah. But it's a lake that vanishes. It fills up rapidly, and it's got several rivers. I think they said 3 rivers feeding it, but it actually has not got any.
We call them puddles where I live.
Sorry.
we call them puddles where I live.
Puddles. Is this something used to make vanishing cream?
Yeah, but apparently it's got a sinkhole underneath it, which is where the water goes to. And if the water in is greater than the water out through the sinkhole, it fills up. And if the water's low, then it just goes dry. And it really is. It says Lough on the side of the Vanishing Lake. Fascinating. I was thinking, I recognise that person.
Yeah.
So I got back onto the iPad and go back to the beginning of the one show. And yes, it was Liz Ware.
She's just agreed to do our Get a Word Online concert. Amy's confirmed it yesterday, she has. So I'm dead pleased. I've known Liz since 1900 and frozen to death, me.
Which one? The next one or some other one?
Eh?
The next one or some other one?
I'm not sure if it's February or March, but she's agreed to do it. So,
I need to put some adverts out, but can't do it until I know what who's there.
Yeah, it could be February, essentially. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, right. Gary, you've been ever so quiet, and Keith.
Been listening.
Yeah, so how's Cornwall?
They can't get a word in edgeways. They can't get a word in edgeways, Mike.
We like that name. Okay. We sorted up in a pub in Much Wenlock. We like that name. Okay. Is it snowing in Cornwall?
Cornwall's been pretty mizzle, I say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of blue sky this afternoon, and so I rushed out and enjoyed it. But for the past 2 weeks, it's been just grey and wet, and well, we don't get snow down here because we got the sea on 3 sides, of course. But it's other than that, you know, it's
talking about these words and things. What's your definition of mizzle?
Mizzle, it's like, well, you know, it's that when you need a paper from the corner shop and you look outside and it's a bit sort of like misty and you think, it looks like it could be raining a little bit, but I could probably go and get a paper and not put my coat on, and by the time you get to the shop you soak through to the skin, but you wouldn't know it looking out the window that was going to happen.
So an old boy told me years ago in the middle of the Forest of Dean, which is a forest, for those who don't know, between 2 rivers, the Wye and Severn. It's about 200 square miles. And mizzle means that the top of the leaf and the bottom of the leaf are the same wetness. Yeah, isn't it interesting when you think about it? Yeah.
Lord, can I ask a question? Norman, do you like snow or don't you like snow?
Oh, I like snow, but if you're all prepared for it and everything like that. But when I was a young lad, we moved into a house in the Ottawa Valley that was basically had not left the 1800s. So there was no electricity and no plumbing. So which meant an outhouse, a wood shed, and a well. So we had to dig every single morning through the snow to the woodshed, the well, and the outhouse. So I didn't always like the snow, but when we'd finished our chores, why every slope in the around the house was a playground. So
right. It sounds a pretty good upbringing.
I live in what's called a flat place, Norfolk. We don't often get snow, but occasionally. And last Saturday we had snow, and we all know we've been in lockdown. It's been hell, it's been shit, it's been pretty much everything else in between. But on Saturday, we've got a hills 100 yards from here in Norwich. And on Saturday, I went out the door with the family, went up the road in our little bubble, and everywhere, there were people. There were kids. They were hammering it down these slopes, which are really steep, and just having a ball. And a young woman turned to me and she said, I can't believe how wonderful it is to hear people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this sudden moment when we all realized we'd forgotten. And then we watched this family, I kid you not, it was a wife, a husband, an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, and all they had was a piece of blue tarpaulin. And they put it on the top of the hill on the snow, and they wrapped it around themselves, and they hammered it down that slope. And it was hysterical. And it was just such a reminder of what we're missing.
Well, if you wait a little while, Snow White, Disney's in the process of making a nautical version of the Snow White story. They're going to call it Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
If you want to keep laughing, you just need something like grandchildren or stepdaughters that take the rise out of you continuously. And,
got a wife for that.
It'll work. So,
When I worked as a lollipop man, we call them crossing guards here, but those children were like a dose of sunshine every time they come. Chattering like magpies, and you had to keep them in line to says cross the road safely, etc., etc. But it was such a flow of life when the children were going by. And in the wintertime, when it seemed cold and miserable, every single piece of ice was a football with those kids. And the parents would be trying to hang on to one, maybe three kids all trying to kick at the one piece of ice. But so it was a daily show. I really enjoyed it.
I love hearing kids playing in the street, to be honest. We're quite
Yeah.
a straight road here, and we're in a cul-de-sac, and occasionally the kids are out playing. It's quiet at the moment. It's really nice to hear.
Yeah. So, Mike, you've been quite quiet as well. So, what have you been up to today?
I've been listening to some Americans telling me how I can make a lot of money by public speaking.
Oh, okay.
Not worked yet. I was just thinking, when you were talking about Liverpool, it reminded me of, I was staying with my aunt in a tenement in Liverpool, and we went to the pictures, and we went to see, and it was with my little brother who's 7 years younger than me, and I was probably 10 at the time. And we went to see The Wizard of Oz, and we went in, the film started, and he started crying. And my auntie said to him, "What's wrong, Andrew?" Because he's called Andrew. And he said, "The poster was in colour." And it's just because we were talking about Liverpool, I hadn't thought of that for donkey's years. I suddenly remembered how upset he was until she went over the rainbow.
Can you remember which cinema it was?
I can't, but it was 10 minutes walk from her flat, and I don't know where her flat was.
Oh.
But I said that I think they were calling it tenements, as though she was still in Scotland because she was from Greenock.
Yeah.
So, Maria, are you blue or red?
I'm neither. I don't adhere to either religion. I stay out of that, Mike, because it's war if you get involved. It really is. And truly it is a religion, isn't it? I mean, I know there's sort of like you're either a left footer or a right footer, depending on which team you support. And Liverpool is a bit like sort of Northern Ireland at times, certainly on the 12th of July, which happens to be my birthday. And obviously my family are Catholic, so I used to have a lot of it. My mother once bought me an orange birthday cake, and everybody laughed at me. Thanks, Mum. She got it cheap because it was left over from King Billy's day. People forget Liverpool is still quite a lot like. There's a lot of Irish people. My daughter said to me the other day, "Mum, only because her and James, they've moved from London and they may end up going to Liverpool. They're looking in Liverpool now." She said only Liverpool would have a grocer's shop called Bread and Wine. It's true that there is a shop, that's what it's called, Bread and Wine, and that's so it appeals to Catholics. It's still like that, It's still a kind of strangely divided city. Although I have to say, talking of football, those football fans generally do get on. I would say that they do generally. They don't fight.
It's a lot better in Liverpool than it is in Glasgow.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
But it's Glasgow that came up with Billy Connolly.
Yeah.
Pretty much solved, because I reckon he's a philosopher, right, Billy Connolly.
Yeah.
He said, because he was in the middle of Belfast somewhere and he was playing his banjo, and someone heckled him. Now, if there's one thing in life you don't probably do is heckle Billy Connolly.
Yeah. You wouldn't win, would you?
You're not going to win, right? Okay. But he heckled him or something, and he turned around and he just got cross, I think, and he turned around and he goes, the bloody place with this Northern Ireland is, there's too many Protestants, too many Catholics, and not enough fucking Christians.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody just went quiet,
Yeah.
And since then, he's always got on with both sides. And any time I've been over in Northern Ireland, and I haven't been for a while now, because I used to go for a bit from time to time. We had business interests over there. It just got me out of so many holes. when it comes to the religion in Northern Ireland, you just quote Billy Connolly. It gets you out of all sorts of holes. It really does, yeah.
And
But,
also the other comedian actually from Glasgow that I enjoy is, I don't know whether you've come across I think her name's Jamie Golding or something like that. She's the Janie Godley, that's it, yeah. The woman who does the voiceover of Nicola Sturgeon, and she improvises. I think she's similar to Billy Connolly, isn't she, in that way? If you haven't come across her, YouTuber or whatever, she's great, isn't she, Mike?
She's fabulous, yeah. It was her birthday yesterday. She turned 60. She's like yourself, Paul, just 60.
When I was growing up, was one I had a big influence on me is Dave Allen.
Yeah, he was great, wasn't he?
And he was Catholic as they come, but he was the one who took the piss out of them. It got to the point where they just about excommunicated him.
Yeah. He's brilliant. What a storyteller, Mike. He was a natural born storyteller, wasn't he, Dave Allen?
Well, it was him, and there was you probably wouldn't have heard of him. It's a fellow called Blaster Bates, who was a gun. He blew up things. Blasted meant because he used dynamite, and he learned it all in the Second World War, and he started in 1946, and he made more money in the 50s and the 60s telling stories about what went wrong when he was blowing things up, and his records and things. But I YouTubed him the other day, and he is a man of his time, because he probably one of the few people that that thought apartheid was a good thing. You know, he went shooting in Africa and all sorts of things. And that side of about 20% of his stories, I wouldn't dream of telling nowadays. No. I wouldn't even want to listen to, let alone tell. Right? But he's got 6, and he came to the first fete. Because he was a friend of my dad's, and we booked him, and he came down and he took one look at the audience, and he was just smashing. He just got it right, but he was in his 70s and been doing it now for about 40 years. Yeah, he did call us a bunch of hippies on a hill, but he was, and he didn't charge us any money either, because he did it as a freebie for us. So it was the second festival.
The Suffolk man that blew up things, called Dynamite Jim, was kind of the opposite. He was a man of very few words.
Right.
And he'd been to America on holiday, and it was back in the time when, you know, it was a big deal to have been to America on holiday. And so we're all sitting around the farmhouse expecting these fantastic tales of America. And so someone turned around to him and said, all right, Dynamite Jim, what was America like? We're expecting this great tale. He went, salt run dry, and that was it.
Yeah,
Shane would know those people.
Yeah, Blaster Bates one night.
Yeah. I'm going to say good night.
You're off. You're off, Gary. Bye. We better let Ali get some sleep. It's about 12:30 in Marrakesh at the moment.
Yeah. I'm going to say goodbye and good night, and how weird it's been telling your stories in me 90.
Yeah,
it really has.
Put your curlers in next time. Will you?
I should have. I don't know what's wrong with me. Thanks, everyone. It's been good to see you all.
I really.
I'm going to go.
Very famous. There was a very famous bishop in Liverpool who was a great storyteller. He used to play cricket for England. He ended up as a bishop of Liverpool. I'll remember his name just now, because I know half a dozen of his stories. He's ever so famous, he was. And I'll track him down for you.
It's been fantastic. Thanks, Mike, for looking after us.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, John.
Thanks, Lucy, for inspiring the site, and thank you, Ali, for staying up to look after us.
Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Mike, we'll see you tomorrow night. Mike's on 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Mike Faxty.
You, me, and Paul, if he's still here, we'll have a chat about it. Okay, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.